What's wrong with Demetrius Johnson? What does he have to do with this?
He ruined the Benavidez rematch.
What do you mean?
His second fight with Joe B.
Oh, you're saying he's like Joe B in that he got the quick knockout? Sorry.
Well, I mean, and that
You're saying Davison is like Demetrius?
Yeah, and that sucked.
I see.
Everyone was like, oh, look, it shows how flyweights can finish fights early. And I was like, no, go away!
Doesn't it also make you feel bad in that case to be mad at him for just instantly KOing his opponent?
No!
That's what he's supposed to do.
DJ learned from that.
You think so? You don't think if he could have done that again, he would have?
I like to think not. I only care about,
So wait a minute. You're revealing that all this time you think Demetrius Johnson could be putting away everyone in one round and has been choosing to have 4.5 round flyweight fights instead?
I consider that fighters, at least the ones that, think about these things, tailor their approaches to what I want.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what they should be doing.
Most of them I think are.
Yeah, so I can give respect to DJ for we talk about how fighters are evolving over time, and DJ, he understood that I didn't approve of him knocking Joe B out early. And I mean, fair enough, knocking out Henry Cejudo was funny though. But
no double standards here.
No.
All right, welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. Phil McKenzie and I are your hosts, I being Connor Rebush, and the two of us were talking, before the show began. I gotta be honest, Phil, I was pretty fucking jazzed to come in and discuss some of these fights. Davis and Figueiredo, holy shit. Even what we did see at a Marina Royval I thought was impressive. Shevchenko was even more brutally depressing than ever before, but at least that's, I've come to terms with that. That's like a funny sort of thing to discuss. You just bummed me out, Phil. You're never happy.
Yay.
Davis and Figueiredo really finished him too fast. Oh, Brandon Moreno, dominated Royval on the ground, but not enough. What was the other one? Phil, I'm trying to embarrass you for the intro of the show. A little help?
I'm gonna leave you on your own.
Less interested in producing a good broadcast than he is in winning the fake petty squabble between hosts. Well, that's Phil McKenzie for you. Again, I'm Connor Rebush. Welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Hands. We are talking, as you may have just guessed, about the results of UFC 255, which was at points an extremely fulfilling and exciting card, and at points actually didn't quite live up to expectations. I think that's always a possibility when you have a card like this that looks, good on paper, whereas a card like next week's can afford to just be mediocre and still feel as if it has exceeded expectations. The main event is quite good, although might be a really hideous fight. Curtis Blaydes versus Derek Lewis, though, is at least a very meaningful fight, and one that certainly, Phil, I don't even have to ask you to guess that you and I are both very interested in. Everything else sucks, to be honest. What's the next best fight on this card? It's probably Spike Carlisle versus some guy.
What do you mean, some guy?
Bill Algio, of course. Bill Algio was fun, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good. I didn't have his name in front of me and I forgot it. But I do like Bill Algio. I think that's a good matchup.
But yeah, that is the second best fight on the card. This is pretty atrocious.
Yeah. I mean, and that is a good fight. I mean, it's silly and weird, which is fitting for the main event too, but it is good. Like, I can't take that away from it. Next best fight is, this is actually really hard to decide. They're all really bad. Each time I look at it. Is it Anthony Smith versus Devin Clark? That can't be. It sure as hell isn't Ostovich versus Bazani. God, it's really
bad. It is never. It is never Rachel Ostovich.
Or Gina Mazzani. I mean, come on, be real.
No. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked up these, I haven't honestly looked up the lighter weight fights.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot of fighters
there might be some hidden gems in here, but from the known fighters, this is pretty.
It's bad.
Pretty terrible.
From our usual, casual fan perspective, because that's what we are. Not good. So we're gonna talk. We're going to talk about, we really know how to get people hyped up for the thing we're about to spend an hour discussing, Phil?
This is appropriate though. I mean, no one's going to be going into Derek Lewis versus Curtis Blaydes expecting it to be, the peak of the kind of technical mountain that we've been climbing throughout the course of this card.
No.
It's going to make much more sense if
it's the bog that we've been sinking into.
Exactly. We've just sort of been splodging through this random collection of fights, and then it's like, oh, it's this at the end.
Yeah. Great. Psycho-style shot of Derek Lewis being dredged out of a swamp after having death-rolled Curtis Blaydes into it. So we're going to talk about the main event. And is that it? Maybe we'll talk about Carlisle Algio as well. And otherwise, it's going to be all talking about UFC 255. So there we go. It only took a mere 5 minutes to lay out what the episode's going to be about. Without further ado, why don't we jump into that main event, Phil? Curtis Blaydes, Derek Lewis. Now, I don't know why. Actually, I do know why. My initial reaction to this matchup was a positive one for Curtis Blaydes. Because I was like, Derek Lewis only beats guys who try to wrestle him who are bad at wrestling. Like, that's usually how the Derek Lewis size factor works, is that he scares people who don't wrestle into wrestling, and then they get exhausted because he's huge and hard to move around. I thought, Curtis Blaydes is he's actually a wrestler. So that's going to be okay. Like, he's a different kind of fighter than that. He's got different energy systems. And then I remembered the Volkov fight and a couple other moments from throughout Curtis Blaydes' career. And I realized this might be the curse of heavyweight. That it just might be one of those things where the dynamic doesn't actually change all that much. Depending on the apparent level of the person coming up against it. That maybe just Curtis Blaydes, at a certain point, realizing that he has to take Derek Lewis down to beat him comfortably, or to beat him at all, still can destroy him over the course of a 5-round fight. And literally the only thing that's really still perplexing me about trying to pick this matchup, and this is a major factor, is that Blaydes himself is maybe the most durable fighter in the UFC. This is a guy who has been hit clean with, not just with any shots. He got hit clean with an Alistair Overeem knee. He got hit clean with Mark Hunt's right hand and his left hook. We've seen him hurt, we've seen him recover, but other times we've seen him eat massive shots and not even actually show any effects. So that is obviously a major factor against Derek Lewis, is simple durability. But otherwise, it looks like a matchup where Curtis Blaydes does what every other Derek Lewis opponent does, and just blows his arms out, trying to take Derek Lewis down and control him. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that was basically my thoughts as I ran through this is one of the ones where fights that have happened in the interim have made me less confident about one guy's chances. And yeah, it's that Volkov fight. Because it's a Derek Lewis fight.
Right.
I didn't think that Volkov could have a Derek Lewis fight against Curtis Blaydes.
No.
I didn't think he would. Because I thought, he would get something that would happen to him that was approximately like what happened. I thought he would just get finished, basically.
Yep.
Curtis Blaydes is an incredibly violent fighter on the ground, and Volkov is primarily something of a noodly dude who has been TKO'd by ground strikes before.
Well, he is also famously durable, but
yeah, he got Derek Lewis himself.
Yeah,
winning pretty much the entirety of the fight until the last few seconds where he got knocked out.
Might be the most Derek Lewis fight, in fact.
He just needed more grappling.
He really was not on his way to losing at the point that he lost.
No.
Yeah. So.
He wasn't even looking particularly exhausted. It was just like, oh, no, he's coming after him, and it's over.
I hope Mookie Alexander is listening right now and desperately searching for that short video clip of me with the mustache getting really excited about Derek Lewis. I know he is. So this becomes one of those ones where I think it's interesting because I think it's so close to being the greatest example of this fight that Derek Lewis could possibly ever win. Yeah.
Because the dynamic in the Cormier fight was, pretty much the same thing, but Lewis's tendency to just get up on all fours and stand up kind of fell off against someone with a smidge of submission acumen.
Yeah.
But Blaydes doesn't have that, or at least if he does, he's never shown it.
I think that really is the thing. Cormier's jiu-jitsu was like entirely the difference that Cormier has developed. I mean, he used to be a Dave Camarillo guy. I don't think Camarillo still teaches at AKA, but like that
he left a few years back.
Yeah,
well, quite a few years back,
a while ago now. But Cormier is like he's a good example of somebody who really has melded his wrestling game with a functional, like pared down wrestler style jiu-jitsu game. And Blaydes is a guy who is such a wrestling pin fighter still in his brain and in his muscle memory that it frequently takes him 3 rounds of having asserted control before he even unleashes that ground and pound violence that you alluded to before. It's a totally different approach to the top game.
So, I think so. The basic thing is there is a solid chance that Derek Lewis can survive this. I mean, especially because Derek Lewis has been getting better at surviving on the floor. I mean the Alexei Oleinik fight is bad in terms of the Lewis engaging in grappling situations when he shouldn't. Actually, good in terms of his ability to survive on the mat.
Yeah, I would say so. In fact, I think it's weird because you and I, of course, famously lamented the recent developments in Lewis's game. As I think we'll lament any developments in Derek Lewis's game. But it does seem that he's just kind of adjusted. It's like Derek Lewis is like a I don't know. There's a term for this. He's like an octopus. He's just the same mass, the same fundamental mass at all times. And you can try to change the game of Derek Lewis, but something within him will just morph to just sort of assume the exact same sort of meta game he was playing before. So we were really worried that he lost a bunch of weight and started moving his feet. We're like, no, this ruins it. That's not what Derek Lewis does. He's not going to be a giant guy who people exhaust themselves literally by just smashing into his hips and not being able to move him with their wrestling. But now instead he's got jiu-jitsu, which is really weird. Not the next step I expected, But it has kind of just filled that gap where like now maybe people have a slightly, marginally easier time wrestling him, but now he's like actually hitting reversals and going to control positions on the ground after starting from his back. So, and not just by bench pressing them. So yeah, I don't know. I was really troubled by Curtis Blaydes in that Volkov fight. I gotta be honest. He was, it was the cardio more than anything else. And it was also the lack of, I think this is maybe the real thing that will hold Curtis Blaydes back. I don't know how much of a hindrance this is at heavyweight, to be honest. But, he has not yet shown an ability to make any kind of adjustment in a fight. We've been really, really impressed with his ability to not get put off of his game plan. Like that is already a very good quality. And like, you know, going way back to him getting almost completely destroyed by Mark Hunt and still realizing that his game plan was happening and he needed to choose this moment to time the takedown and turning it all around, into, you know, going from very nearly losing to dominating the fight. Since then, I think we've seen that, like, yeah, Curtis Blaydes he's got stick-to-itness, but he doesn't adapt tactically or anything over the course of a fight. Against Volkov, all he needed to do, was just slow down. Honestly. Like, after the second round, Volkov had been shutting down a ton of takedowns, but he wasn't really lighting Curtis Blaydes up on the feet. You know, his own striking had been greatly reduced by the threat of Curtis Blaydes' takedowns. He had to pay attention to them. And yet, Curtis Blaydes was still like full energy expenditure, max power, just shooting for these takedowns over and over and over again, and running into exchanges. It's like he's not comfortable at long range. So he's just got to it's like he's not comfortable allowing himself to think. Because if he had just thought, do exactly what you're doing, except stay further away 30% more of the time and stop doing stuff during those periods, he would have, I think, been way more comfortable down the stretch. But instead, yeah, he just, once he stopped being able to get the takedowns, everything started to really kind of fall apart because it's all he could think to keep trying to do. I can't pick Derek Lewis over Curtis Blaydes. He's actually good at MMA.
It's true.
It doesn't feel right.
That's how you want to play it.
No. Are you just going to comfortably pick Derek?
No, I'm going to pick Curtis Blaydes.
Okay. Well, that does make me feel slightly better about picking Derek, but I won't do that yet.
Yeah, I mean, because I think there's basically there's two elements to how Derek Lewis wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Partially is the physical exhaustion to make things work,
right?
And like it's forcing people to like lock up with him and get exhausted with him. You know, firstly there is the argument that like Volkov has very good cardio. Lewis does not have very good cardio. He has okay cardio, which he is good at measuring out.
Yeah,
is much stronger than everyone else. It's probably not that much stronger than Curtis Blaydes.
Probably not.
Like Curtis Blaydes is very, very, very strong.
He's a big dude.
I am not sure that Derek Lewis is going to be able to exhaust him by defensively wrestling against him. Secondly, I think the other thing which makes Lewis work is fear. I don't know how much like Curtis Blaydes gets scared by things. I think that's the flip side of him not changing his approach much.
I think you're right.
I don't think he has the imagination for it.
Sure. Yeah, it looks like he seems to me like a doer, Curtis Blaydes. You know, you equip him with the tools, you say, go in there, get him, Tiger. And he just goes like a wind-up toy.
Yeah. And, you know, we've mentioned before, Lewis isn't much of a counterpuncher, and he's not a Ngannou-esque, like handsy takedown destroyer, who's going to be picking people off with uppercuts when they come in, who just has like this natural sense for how to pick off level changes and so on.
Right.
He's not that guy. He's, most of his finishes are when the other guy is like, oh my god, I need to get away from this dude, and they start backing up, and then Lewis just charges them. When he's, landing head kicks at range, this kind of stuff. It's not generally like on the counter that he does his best work.
You're right.
So I could just see a game plan where Blaydes just has an approach where he's just like push him up against the fence with strikes, shoot takedowns, get takedowns, and then rinse repeat for the next round. I mean, that Ilir Latifi fight was much closer than it sort of felt like it was going to be before the fight. Just
Latifi's
because,
wrestling was surprisingly successful, in fact.
Yeah, and he is a good wrestler, but he's not Curtis Blaydes, and more to the point, he's gassed out in much more significant ways than Curtis Blaydes ever had prior to that Volkov fight.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I still just got to pick Curtis Blaydes for this one. It'll be funny if Lewis gets the mean KO.
Yeah, I'm still struggling. Part of me really does want to go for Lewis.
It will be, I think, the ultimate Lewis win if he could.
Really. That's the temptation.
If it was a Lewis win, if it was, a proper one, if he didn't just like knock him out in the first exchange or something.
Yes.
If it was a proper Derek Lewis win where he just gets absolutely out wrestled for round after round and then lands some insane blitz.
Yeah, it's not a proper Derek Lewis win unless he's clinging to the brink of life and death, at like 2 different points. I think so it's the chin is a major factor for me. Curtis Blaydes being so durable, it obviously helps that even if he does exhaust himself, which I do still think there's a significant chance of. 'Cause granted, Alexander Volkov is also a big man. He's never had that effect really on aggressive wrestlers though. Like he even got taken down a good bit in the early going of that fight with Blaydes. And yet he was still able to sort of Derek Lewis him more and more as the fight went on by having like just worked on his wrestling. Volkov is also, to use him as MMA math on the other side of the equation, he's also insanely durable, as noted before. Curtis Blaydes has been knocked out by Francis Ngannou. Volkov's been knocked out by Derek Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think those are still kind of the 2 guys in this division where chins just don't
Who's the other weird guy that Volkov got finished by?
Vitaly Minakov.
Oh, Minakov, yes, of course.
Who just, who caught him cold, basically. He rocked him with a huge shot, like a minute or 2 into the fight, and then just pounded him out on the ground until the referee saved him. But yeah, Volkov is also tremendously durable, and Lewis was able to finish him. So, like, I don't think Blaydes' chin is out of Lewis's reach, is what I'm saying. And if that's true, it's more fun to pick Derek Lewis, but I think you're right, which I hate. I would much rather pick Derek Lewis.
I'm totally not invested in being right for this one. I don't care at all. It would be, as much as I kind of like Curtis.
Of course.
As much as I like Curtis Blaydes, like he is a more functional MMA fighter, it would just be funny to watch Lewis win this on paper pretty horrific style matchup.
Yeah. Yeah, because like that's how he has won so many of these. Just by like refusing, he just doesn't lose them. That's the only way he wins. He just doesn't lose them quickly enough. I don't know. I mean, Latifi had more success, but I think Blaydes is going to go in there and he is going to have success. And if he does, like that's the thing about Derek Lewis that you can never allow yourself to forget. He looks like absolute dog shit. But realistically, he's only like just normal dog shit. He's never as terrible as he seems. And it encourages people to just go ham fighting him. He always looks like he's on the brink of certain defeat. And that's why people destroy themselves. I'm going to pick Derek Lewis. Why the fuck not? I think Curtis Blaydes is going to, no matter what Derek Lewis looks like, I'm picking Curtis Blaydes essentially to crash himself into Derek Lewis enough times that before he realizes it, he's suddenly in a vulnerable position. Even if Derek Lewis fights a terrible fight, I think that's what's going to happen.
Respect it. I respect the pick.
All right.
I will not be sad to see it if it happens.
All right. It is exciting. Got to say that. And I like Curtis Blaydes too. In part just because wrestling looks really fun and dramatic at heavyweight. We need good heavyweight wrestlers. We also need to end this.
You got to respect a fight which is essentially title eliminator kind of thing, where we've covered a lot of fights where you have to ask what the key question is, and key question isn't like, oh, is this guy's A game going to work against this dude? Not that at all. Everyone is like, oh yeah, he's totally going to be able to out-wrestle him. It's like, will this guy, this potential title challenger, get tired from implementing his A game too well against the other guy? And it's a totally legit question, and that's hilarious. And one of those questions that only heavyweight can really offer us.
It's a beautiful thing.
Only Derek Lewis, for that matter.
Yeah, really. Even he stands apart even from the rest of the heavyweight division. God bless you, Derek Lewis. God bless all of us. He said, just before posting the episode, minutes before Derek Lewis withdraws from the fight. Boy, wouldn't that do wonders for this card. So hopefully all is clear. You are listening to this episode right now, and Derek Lewis versus Curtis Blaydes is yet ahead of you. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I think we're going to talk about Bill Algio and Spike Carlisle, which is a weird fucking mess of a fight. And then after that, Davison Figueiredo versus Alex Perez, Valentina Shevchenko versus Jennifer Maia. And I'm getting tired just thinking about the rest after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. I'm trying to wrap my head around the one other fight from this upcoming card that we are actually going to discuss. It's a meme fight, and that's why we picked it. Make no mistake, it is almost as much a meme fight as the main event. But like the main event, that doesn't mean it's simple. It does not mean it's simple to figure out at all. I'm talking, of course, about Spike Carlisle, the vile Spike Carlisle, versus Bill Algio, who, if you don't remember him, was the guy who went 3 extremely hard rounds with Ricardo Lamas back at the very end of August. Just came out of nowhere, was certainly on this show at least, predicted to just kind of get out wrestled by Lamas. And then nothing that Lamas tried to do to him actually ended up being all that easy. And in fact, Phil can tell you, I came in here as we were talking about it with my memory of it being that Algio had in fact won. That was how much he outperformed my expectations. So Phil, caution me, pull me back from the edge of excitement as you do so very well. Tell me, why should I actually be a little worried about Bill Algio? Why should I follow Zane Simon's advice and not overrate this man based on a good look and a loss?
It's like nice to know I have like the official position of excitement dampener.
Yeah.
He'll fit into it well. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to like about the way he fought Lamas that I think translates well to a fight with Carlisle.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also notable that like Lamas is traditionally someone who will sort of fight in neutral space.
Yeah.
He is classically, an opportunist. He'll have just exchanges. He's one of these guys who will basically take the fight you give to him, whether it's like striking or wrestling affair. He will make changes against like certain style matchups. I think his natural tendency was just to have like mid-range striking exchanges, and that kind of worked out okay for Algio in this fight. I think the problem with Carlisle is that Carlisle will just force.
Got some nice little fight audio in over there. Over you talking? What's the problem with Spike Carlisle?
He will force incredibly stupid and athletic exchanges right from the beginning of the fight.
Yeah,
I think Algio was able to ease himself in a bit more against Lamas as kind of a crafty veteran. But I do think he has a lot that will play well against Carlisle. Like I said, I think he is one of these tall fighters who does well who's sort of built a game around being tall.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the point where he hurt Lamas is, the classic. It's the tall guy with the step knee as the shorter guy changes levels on him.
Mm-hmm.
He throws like really long punches, which I think Lamas was able to deal with adequately because Lamas is also like a good straight puncher. As evidence against Hick Diaz, right?
Right.
Where Lamas just kind of chased him down. But Carlisle is not that guy.
No, yeah. It's all the differences between Carlisle and Lamas that really are, and boy, are there a lot of differences. Like you said, Carlisle knows where his very, very white bread is buttered. He knows that he's a freak athlete. Like, to a degree that I do want to emphasize that, to a degree that I think is easy to underestimate. Because I can recall watching Carlisle's pre-UFC performances the first time I talked about him on the Vivisection, with that bastard Zane Simon. And I think both of us were like, this guy looks terrible. He's just, like, he hadn't fought anyone really all that notable, as far as I recall. Although he did have a win over 12-3 Fernando Padilla. So, like, it was like, he just kind of, like, people just kind of fall over. I think, here's what I'm trying to say, is that at a lower level, a vast athletic advantage, can actually be kind of hard to distinguish from just fighting bad competition.
It's also that, like, you don't know whether it's going to translate to the UFC or not, because there's lots of people who look like killer athletes, and then they come to the UFC and you're like, oh, right, by UFC standards, you are not a killer athlete.
And to be fair, I still don't really know how well it translates to the UFC. Because it worked immediately in one fight, which is how it usually works. Like, when it does work, it's pretty instantaneous. And then it failed kind of catastrophically in the second fight, although it also did work for long stretches of that fight. So I don't know. I still don't have a super good...
I will say it is also genuine. It's pretty difficult to, like, wrap your head around that kind of thing. As, like, physically see a fast, athletic ninja person. Like, the mind does rebel a little bit.
Because
I can see why, if you're watching tape, you might just be like, oh yeah, I don't really see anything special at all.
Because of the red hair.
Yeah. Because of the gingerness, yeah.
I do think that did actually have an effect.
I mean, your mind naturally, the brain finds patterns. It naturally just cuts and pastes people being foot slow and plodding.
I do think that may have actually happened a little bit. I'm like, there's no way. No, Spike Carlisle is a freakish athlete. He's very strong. Like, I'm talking, like, do you remember when, like, GSP couldn't move Johnny Hendricks type strong? where he will just show up and just like win exchanges that aren't fair for him to win.
Yeah, it was like there was a point like where he just turned out of I think Quarantillo's back mount because he just felt like it.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that Algio was super impressive in his scrambling and like mat wrestling to escape from Lamas. I do think that can still be a factor here. But his takedown defense was also pretty impressive. And that I think is going to suffer. Because I think Ricardo Lamas is the kind of wrestler who will connect with you and then start making the technical adjustments he needs to correctly finish the takedown. And I think Spike Carlisle is a lot more likely to just like, once he realizes you're slightly off balance, he's just picking you up off the ground. I'm not sure that Algio's like well considered, deliberate, methodical takedown defense is going to have the same effect. I do still think he'll find openings on the ground when he's there to scramble out. But even that's going to be harder. Cause like, yeah, there's going to be positions where he feels like he's got an avenue and Carlisle is just able to hold on to him anyway, even from a position of bad leverage or whatever, cause he's very, very strong. So I think, you basically covered all the other grounds. Like, Algio does seem like the type to pick up or at least maintain a fast pace, and that does seem to be serious kryptonite for Carlisle. Algio seemed really tough, and also like a very intelligent fighter. Like I do think that's the main reason I'm picking him is that he can, sort of mold and change seemingly every aspect of his offensive game to have increased variety as he's picking his opponent apart. And the other thing is that, very much unlike Ricardo Lamas, no matter how damaging or overpowering Carlisle is in the beginning, and he may be able to do that for longer than you expect, cause he's such a great athlete. But as we did finally see in the Quarantillo fight, when the turn happens, he's very much losing the fight. There's no more like, this is competitive. I don't know where it's going to go. Once the turn happens, he's like insanely hittable and tired and easy to push around, bad footwork, everything. So yeah, I'm expecting a very difficult start for Algio, to be honest. I think he's going to get flung around a good bit, but after that, I do think by the last like 3 or 4 minutes of the fight, it's if he wins, it'll be all him. So I'll take Bill Algio.
I think I'm going to take the horrible pick, and I'm going to pick Carlisle.
The vile Carlisle, do it.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I think he's just got more of a chance of finishing early, and like Quarantillo is one of those guys his whole thing is being an incredibly tough, incredibly durable wrestler. And he was engaging Carlisle in every single scramble. Mm-hmm. And even then, Carlisle was fighting at one of the most stupid paces I've ever seen.
Yes, moronic.
Even then, Carlisle ran out of gas at around the 8-minute mark.
Yeah.
Meaning, if he can like pile on enough idiot offense within those 2 rounds, he can win decision. I'm not sure if I'd trust Algio to like finish him or rack up enough, enough damage for a 10-8 in the third. But also, he's got the more significant chance of just clobbering Algio out the gate instantly.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's just an addition of those 2 like probabilities. I think he can win 2 rounds and then get tired in the classic Gleison T-Ball manner, or he can just wipe him out.
I think you're right, and I'm changing my mind. I'm flip-flopping right now. I can't do it once the pick's been locked in, but I think I tried to be smart with it. I'm like, Bill Algio's like, he's a smarter fighter. He does smart fighter things. But that is a very good point to raise. A crucial point for me. Bill Algio is not definitively a guy who takes over and then finishes you. Maybe Spike Carlisle invited the final round he got from Billy Quarantillo, but that is what Billy Quarantillo does. Like, that is his A game, is to smash into you over and over and over until you get tired, and then to continue building and getting even more aggressive. He is a momentum fighter. And Algio, it seems like more of just like a good technical sort of simmerer. And he also just doesn't have a lot of finishes. So if he's not going to be like going blood and guts and making big statements like as soon as Carlisle starts to gas, assuming it happens around the same point, I think you're right. Carlisle can probably bank the first 2 rounds. In the dumbest way ever, too. He's gonna, I hope he makes a terrible mistake again. Let's also not forget, maybe the momentum of the Quarantillo fight would have been different if Carlisle hadn't just stopped fighting 7 seconds before the end of the first round and walked away and got put in his stupid pale ass.
Tremendous.
Yeah, that's that one. There are 2 highlights at least. Let's put it that way. For this upcoming event, 2 fights that I am now very interested in seeing.
One right at the beginning and one right at the end.
Yeah, perfect. That's just how we like it. All right. Well, let's talk about last weekend's pay-per-view then. Since we're done, we're done previewing all that there is that is at least at first glance worth previewing. And let's quickly cover what was in fact a very quick main event: Deiveson Figueiredo versus Alex Perez. Phil, you're mad. You're mad at Deiveson for this, and I want you to explain why.
It's unacceptable. This was meant to be a cool fight. Then it finished after 2 minutes.
Yeah. I do sympathize. I totally feel where you're coming from. I loved it as it was happening. But, I did want to see like a couple rounds of flyweight craziness.
Yeah. And it was looking like it was going to be a great fight. Like it was looking competitive. I was like, oh, the striking exchanges the control of the octagon, like, it's all looking like it could go back and forth at any moment here. Like, got wrestling versus grappling, and then it was just over. And I know it was cool grappling, but just not acceptable.
Very good with the, sort of like a manorial, condescension sort of tone there, Phil.
As I was saying before we started recording, DJ incredibly disappointingly finished Joe B in their rematch.
Yes, which I also something I just found out is that you also hate that result.
Yeah, because it was dumb and sucked.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Want to see Bang Ludwig Joe B against DJ.
Yep.
And then he just got sparked out instantaneously.
Yep. And again,
after that,
I am with you.
DJ mostly had things where he like strategically broke people down before he went for the cool finishes.
Yeah. And that is sort of what you want to see, I guess. It feels to me somehow wrong to look at a quick finish. Maybe this is Contender Series conditioning that's led me to believe that a quick finish is just automatically a good result. But I also think it's probably just the part of me that like drew me to watch fighting in the first place, where I like want to see people's heads get smashed.
Mm-hmm.
And I did see that. So it does feel wrong to complain or to accuse or to talk to Deiveson Figueiredo like, for example, he is my actual sushi chef, at my vast English countryside estate. And I'm demanding that he put on a better show next time he fires up the hibachi grill or whatever I have him doing. I don't know. I mean, I think it's unfortunate that it felt a little abbreviated. I think if we'd gotten one more round out of Moreno and Royval, maybe that would have satisfied our flyweight palate, to the extent that you could have appreciated this one a little more. It was a very impressive finish. It was also, I will remind you, characteristically in line with the suggestions we got from Alex Perez's fight with Joe B. Another one in which, once things turned around, they very quickly, it was over.
Yeah,
So,
it was a strange one. I don't know if it was in line with the Joe B thing because it didn't really feel like a bullying thing so much as it was just.
I think
like,
he was just starting to get bullied.
I don't know, like even then, I mean, he was mostly just like he was mostly jumping on Figueiredo to control him on the ground. I think it was mostly just that he really weirdly let Figueiredo get guard super quickly after that guillotine. He just didn't. He was in half guard and he just let Figueiredo put his legs around him.
Yeah, that was strange. I mean, I think he was confused by the scramble, which was weird, to be honest. Like Figueiredo, let's try to explain for people who maybe haven't seen it. And in explaining this, I want you to keep in mind, this is the thing that we're describing as boring and disappointing. Deiveson Figueiredo is he's in like a rear waist cinch, I think. He's in some kind of tie-up with Perez. Like Perez is about to take his back or about to take him down. And this has been going on for a minute, and it's becoming clear, just before any kind of, adjustment happens, that Figueiredo is like losing control of this position, which is interesting, right? Because all of us are watching at this moment, like, is Perez going to be able to out wrestle him? Mm-hmm. He drops for yeah.
Perez is going for a single leg.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Figueiredo drops for like a scissor sweep.
Like a scissor sweep into a leg lock entry.
Mm-hmm.
The sweep doesn't work, really. Perez manages to just kind of tough it out. His balance is there already and he doesn't go down. But Figueiredo ends up in like this low sort of like, if you're going to hit any leg lock from there, it's going to be a calf slicer. You're that low on the leg. But just maintains a really good bite, basically. Gets Perez into a scramble. And then Perez is about to end up on top of him. And Figueiredo rolls what is almost always considered the wrong way out of this leg lock. He's like trying to do like steamrollers with Alex Perez. Very weird kind of exchange. Like I've never seen, I've seen things sort of like this as entries into guillotines, but he literally does like roll backwards into the guillotine. He's like, I'm gonna roll counterclockwise to get you under my left armpit and catch you from that way. But I will agree with you that once he got to there was definitely a window for Alex Perez to not just let him do everything else he needed to make that guillotine a finish.
Yeah, like it really weirdly looks like Perez just lost track of the positions completely. Like,
yeah,
he didn't seem to be trying to kind of fight the guard pull at all. Yeah.
And I think it was a weird one, but he did kind of just, let Figueiredo like sidle in there after wrapping his head up. He kind of stopped scrambling, which is not good. That's not what you want to do. It's the very beginning of the fight. It's flyweight. The scramble's going to be continuing. So I don't know. I mean, I can understand where you're coming from. I also feel like it was a pretty masterful finish from Figueiredo. But yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see 3 rounds at least of flyweight fun, to be honest. I don't know. I'm not going to be as hard on it as you are, Phil. And I'm also going to say maybe we should take a break so we can start segment 3 off the right way. With a discussion of Valentina Shevchenko and Jennifer Maia and how I was completely right and Valentina Shevchenko hates us after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are 1 or 2 of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, Phil, tell me. What happened between Valentina Shevchenko and Jennifer Maia?
Valentina Shevchenko's most aggressive performance in years.
You know what is funny is that you're right, I think.
He went after her opponent. He initiated punching exchanges.
And yet also, somehow one of her most boring fights ever. I don't know how it could be both at once, but it was. She found a way. And honestly, you know, I don't know. I guess I should mention, because I don't think I'm going to have anything coming out this week. At least nothing I know about yet. If you haven't read it, I did an article on Valentina Shevchenko last week. It was called How Valentina Shevchenko Stinks Up the Joint. I was pretty pleased with it, to be honest. There's a couple typos and things in there that I've noticed in my most recent revisit, checking for any new angry comments, which were definitely my favorite part about it, Phil. Like, I can't lie. I was hoping to make some Valentina stands mad. Even though I thought I made it pretty clear I was, you know, being lighthearted, I thought. But I knew there were going to be some people who just got offended the moment I wasn't nice to Val.
These are some very sincere people.
Well,
their own way.
Yes, in their own way. I don't think any of them were lying to me.
You should caution yourself from making them too mad, Connor.
Well,
I'm certain that many of them have studied the blade.
That's actually probably a good point. Yeah, I'm less worried about them having studied the blade and more like, how close are you at any moment to a psychotic break when you spend so much time watching Valentina? So yeah, that's good advice. I'll take that into consideration. But in that article, I pretty much was like, I was writing it was like, here's a technical breakdown of Valentina Shevchenko. Here are the basic things that allow her to be so dominant and so very boring. And yet, as I was writing the closing paragraph, I said something along the lines of, you know, I'm a realist. I know the Queen of Flies has dark plans for us. That what seems like potentially a promising matchup where this, like, mechanically aggressive, just throwing the same 1-2 over and over style fighter is just going to, like, she's got to walk into counters. That seems on paper like a great matchup for a counterpuncher. I knew that Valentina was going to do something. And I knew it so thoughtlessly that afterwards I started to overthink, like, no, how could she do it? You know what I mean? Like, Jennifer Maia's going to walk into her punches. It may actually be, like, to the extent that the Holly Holm fight was, at least, it may actually be a pretty good Valentina fight. And then I was reminded what happens when somebody walks into Valentina's punches. Which is that they get more than a 50% chance of maybe touching her back with a punch. And Phil, we know what happens when Valentina feels just the sort of the wind off the seam of a glove in the midst of an exchange. The first time that happens in a fight, well, I think we remember what her response is from the Cachoeira fight. Mm-hmm. You know Priscilla Cachoeira, you remember who that is, right?
Another great win from Shevchenko and a finish, I believe.
Not a word this really is not a word I use loosely. In fact, I probably haven't used it on the show more than once or twice. A bum. Valentina fought a bum who hit her with one punch after being stunned seconds into the fight. Less than 10 seconds. She had walked into Valentina's counter and been rocked. And then she lands one glancing blow in a desperate exchange where she's trying not to die. And Valentina takes her down. And then the fight goes on for 7 minutes after that. For 7 more minutes when she was almost done in the first 10 seconds. So anyway, that's what happened to this one. She hit a takedown. You take it away, Phil. I need to control myself. I need to contain. Whew.
That's what people are tuning in for, Connor. The rage.
She's fucking evil, dude. There's something in her that is wrong. Okay, you talk.
So yeah. After this, we had the grappling, and this was, I think, on the feet. I think that this fight showed a few things. Like, firstly, genuinely think this probably was the most aggressive performance of like we've seen from Shevchenko on the feet against someone who wasn't, totally outmatched. I did think it showed like the reason why she's so unwilling to fight like this.
Mm-hmm.
She really doesn't have a lot of variety.
No.
It's like a leading fighter, nor does she have really ways to open the opponent up, because it pretty much was just, a 1-2 or a 3-2, as the case may be.
Yep.
And I think Maia was kind of just cognizant of when to scuttle back out to range and when to throw back, and just tough enough that it was kind of freaking Shevchenko out very slightly.
Yeah, I do think that made a significant difference here, honestly. That just Maia was clearly very durable.
Yeah.
She got
incredibly strong.
Yes. Yeah, physically strong, too. She got KO'd apparently in 10 seconds by Sheila Gaff in her, fifth pro fight. But aside from being caught cold once in her career, which is, if you're unknockoutable and you get knocked out, usually you're caught cold. Aside from that, she's never been stopped, and it definitely looked like a fighter who'd never been stopped in there. I had the exact same thoughts watching this, and honestly, I started to have these thoughts last week while I was finishing up that article too. I was like, I started to cross over the boundary from, Shevchenko throws very little and shows little variety, deliberately. Because she doesn't want to initiate, into the more troubling land of maybe Valentina only does a few things and is only really good at a few things. And I think we saw some suggestion of that here. That it was not just a question of can Valentina respond to the pace and the pressure. It was a question of, can she keep doing that in ways that continue to surprise Jennifer Maia? And she kind of couldn't. I mean, well, granted, she won 4 rounds. Again, I'm being so harsh on how close the fight was. The only thing to be harsh about is how boring it was, really. She did win 4 rounds. It was very clearly her fight.
It was not close at all. I mean, Maia barely landed a punch.
Yeah, hardly. Not even until the 4th and 5th rounds. But I think the switch up she had to stay on top of the changing pace and pressure of this fight was the takedown. That's it. So again, it is still a problem of having very limited variety. Now she does actually have a decent variety of takedown finishes. It's probably the best developed area of her entire game. Even as a Muay Thai fighter, she was a takedown artist. That was the thing she did best. So, that's the switch up. But in terms of pure striking, we might have to pump the brakes a little bit on this praising Valentina's striking technique business. She's very, very quick. Lord knows she throws a jab occasionally, and I like that. Heaven knows I like a jab. But you're right. Pretty much just 1-2s and the occasional right hook. Where were the body shots?
I mean, that 1-2 and then the kind of strafing right hand sequence was nice, but it was just sort of a lot.
Yeah, and she actually started to kind of get grazed on the end of it too. The lack of variety, I think it actually necessitates her to switch to the takedowns. I mean, at least she could fight through, but I don't. It's starting to seem like she doesn't actually have a lot of other answers. That if you can come up with a layer beyond that 1-2, her next layer has to be to go to the wrestling. Because she's not going to slip and suddenly come up with a new, as yet unseen 4th punch. She just only throws those 3 punches.
4 punches?
Yeah, she might.
Crazy talk.
She might do the spinning back fist. That's her 4th punch.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I do have some criticism for Maia in this fight as well, because it didn't look like it so much, because Shevchenko was initiating wrestling exchanges, but I think Maia was genuinely in the Paulo Costa, I'm going to try being technical because I don't actually want to engage with this person that much. Like, she really didn't put herself out there to get hit, like, in any way that will allow her to really win the fight. But another note, I think the worst thing about Shevchenko's grappling was how conservative she was on top.
Yes.
And it was the fact that she would get like these clean trip takedowns, often into side control, and then it looked like she pretty much deliberately went into half guard just because she wanted to control Maia.
Yeah, and normally that's the thing you do like before you do striking. Like normally I'm perfectly willing. I don't even see that as a slight to forgive, the move from side control into half guard. That's common in MMA because it does afford you significantly more control with that leg entanglement. But normally you want that control so that you can then posture up and land or do some other kind of work. Valentina wanted that control because she wanted to not do anything for even longer. She really did nothing when she was on top on the ground. Like it was... When I was writing that final paragraph and I said, somehow I know she has darker plans in store for us, and then I started to doubt whether she actually could, or if it was going to be a fun matchup. When I saw her get on top and do nothing for the first 10 seconds, I knew that was going to be the rest of it. And I realized, no, she really did everything I said she would in terms of like coming up with a way to make the fight bad. And I think what's particularly troubling about that move, Phil, is that like normally, like I said, to go from side control to half guard is fine. There's plenty of good reasons to do that. But Shevchenko is a side control fighter. Like, she does damage to people from side control. She's like a crucifix type of gal. You know, she loves to get that crucifix. She loves to post her head and block one of the arms. She really likes to entangle people's arms and strike from side control. I think it really works for her, like, sort of hunched build where she has a lot of upper body strength, too, to just get her upper body right over the opponent's face to strike. And, so like knowing that and then seeing her instantly get Maia down and almost as instantly, take away the dominant position. She's not good. She's an evil person. She likes our suffering. She won the fight in the least interesting way she possibly could have. Just fuck her, Phil. Just fuck. Hello?
Oh, you there?
Hey, I can hear you now.
So, you were off on some frothing rant.
Yeah.
And about one of the greatest and most complete mixed martial arts.
Enough. And we've done this bit before. We're moving on to Tim Means versus Mike Perry. Are you ready to talk about that?
What did you think about Shevchenko's dancing? I thought it was very sexy and cool.
Did you, Phil? You know what? Let's reverse this game. Describe to me the ways in which you found it sexy and cool.
Hand movements and the facial expression.
Those are definitely two aspects of it.
One of the sexiest things about people being sexy is often a profound sense of smugness. So it's really the combination of those three things.
Yeah. What really turns me on is when someone looks smug in a way that I can only describe, for reasons I don't even really know, as racial? There's some sort of racial superiority in that smile. I can't back this up. I'm just saying. That's the vibe I get. All right. Okay. Anything to plug or any other forgotten preliminary fights to mention?
Nope. Nothing from my end. Not this week.
Cool. Well, me neither. I did just get a DM from Zane. So I'm not going to plug it and say that I've accepted it or not, but he did ask if I want to do a Derek Lewis article. So maybe later this week I'll write something absurd. Probably not super technically insightful. about Derek Lewis. But if you missed it, go check out my piece, How Valentina Shevchenko Stinks Up the Joint. I was pretty happy with it. And you can find that on bloodyelbow.com, where you can also find Phil's other articles when he is producing them. You can also check out the Heavy Hands Patreon. I think I may have ended up cutting a bonus episode out of this episode, so if it's not like an hour and a half long, then you know where the rest of that time went. And for $3 a month, you can get access to that and all of our other bonus content. And find us on social media. You can find Phil at Evil Greg Jackson, me at Boxing Bush, BUSCH. Both of those, of course, on Twitter.com. Hit us with your comments, criticisms, questions, confusing consternations, and all, of course, don't forget your confabulations. I don't know what half of these words mean. I shouldn't be saying them anymore. This has been Heavy Hands. Goodbye.